Hello everyone, welcome to Mastermind. Today let us learn about coral bleaching in this video. Before knowing what is coral bleaching, let us understand what are corals, coral polyps, etc. Corals or coral polyps are tiny and fleshy sea anemones that live in tropical and subtropical oceans and seas. Please remember, they are tiny and fleshy sea anemones. Tiny and fleshy sea anemones that live in tropical and subtropical waters. So, the coral reefs are actually large underwater structures composed of skeletons of colonial marine invertebrates called as corals. These corals are actually tiny and fleshy sea anemones. Individual corals are called as coral polyps. So coral polyps are tiny and fleshy sea anemones that live in tropical and subtropical oceans and seas. The coral species that build the reefs are known as hermatypic or hard corals. They are called as hermatypic corals or hard corals because they extract calcium carbonate from seawater to create a hard, durable exoskeleton that protects their soft sac-like bodies. So we have already told you that coral polyps are actually tiny and fleshy. So this soft sac-like bodies are protected by an exoskeleton, and this exoskeleton is made by calcium carbonate CaCO3 that has been derived out of the seawater. And the calcium carbonate, when after deriving from the seawater, the coral species actually use it to build an outer exoskeleton, and on these exoskeleton microscopic algae called zooxanthellae. Please remember, this is very important. Zooxanthellae reside. So zooxanthellae and coral polyps have symbiotic relationship with each other. These zooxanthellae have photosynthetic abilities. Since these have photosynthetic abilities, they feed the coral polyps. They feed the coral polyps that give them space to reside with carbon compounds. So, zooxanthellae gives carbon compounds to the coral polyps. So, these carbon compounds give energy to the coral polyps. In return, the polyps provide protection to zooxanthellae. So, in return, the coral polyps provide protection to zooxanthellae. So this is a symbiotic relationship wherein both the species are getting benefits. Both the species getting benefits by interacting with each other. So this sort of relationship is called as symbiotic relationship. One more important thing to be noted over here is that the corals are shallow water species. These are shallow water species, usually not found in deep waters. A scientific explanation for this is that the zooxanthellae, as I have already told you, they are photosynthetic. Since they perform photosynthesis, they require sunlight to perform photosynthesis. Hence, these zooxanthellae need to reside in the photic zones, that is, the region in the ocean or seas or any water bodies till where the sunlight can reach. So, since they have to be in the photic zone, they have turned out to be shallow water species. If they are deep water species, then it won't be photic zone, it will become aphotic zone, and these zooxanthellae will not be able to perform photosynthesis, will harm the symbiotic relationship between a coral polyp and zooxanthellae. We spoke about individual coral polyp till now. What happens when millions of polyps get connected to each other and form a colony, form a bigger colony? When such things happen, when a colony of corals are formed, it leads to the formation of coral reefs. Sometimes these coral reefs get converted to islands as well. Corals are actually an indispensable part of marine ecosystem. They are indispensable or an integral part of marine ecosystem because these coral reefs harbor many marine creatures. They harbor thousands of marine creatures. All manners of creatures actually inhabit, breed, feed, and avoid enemies in coral reefs, which naturally forms a very rich ecosystem. There can be as many as 1,500 types of fish within coral reefs, and due to these reasons, the coral reefs are also called as tropical rainforest in the sea. Tropical rainforest in the sea. So please remember, this is a code word, tropical rainforest in the sea. They are one of the most productive ecosystems of the world. Hence, these are also called as tropical rainforest in the sea. Now let us proceed to look at the types of coral reefs. There are three types of coral reefs. They are, the first one is the fringing reef. So the first type of coral reef is the fringing reef. Second is the atolls. Third is the barrier reefs. So please remember fringing reefs, atolls and barrier reefs. Fringing reef is the most common type of reef in the world. Fringing reefs grow directly seaward from the shore. So if this is the shore and if this is the sea, they grow directly towards the sea from shore. They actually form borders along the shoreline and surrounding islands. So they actually form the borders along the shoreline. If this is the shoreline, if this is the shoreline, if you consider this picture, here you can easily understand the fringing reef. So this grows seaward directly from the shore. They actually form the borders along the shoreline and the surrounding islands. So this is the example here. This is the fringing reef here, which is actually formed between the adjacent sea and the island. Fringing reefs form borders along the shoreline and surrounding islands. Fringing reefs grow directly out from the shore. However, if they are separated from the land by an expanse of water, then it results in the formation of barrier reefs. Please look at this picture over here. Here, the island and the ocean, or the island and the barrier reef, is separated by an expanse of water. That is, between the island and the reef, there is water, which is usually a small lagoon of open but deep water between the reef and the shore. So this type of reefs are called as barrier reefs. Even these reefs, they border the shoreline. However, they don't directly grow out from the shore, but usually they are separated from the island or the land. Be it land or island, they are usually separated by an expanse of water. So this results in the formation of barrier reef. The water that separates is usually a open, often deep water. So it is between the reef and the island or the land or the shore. However, when a fringing reef continues to grow upward from a volcanic island that has sunk entirely below the sea level, that means when the island sinks entirely below the sea level, an atoll is formed. These atolls are usually circular or oval with an open lagoon in the center, as you can see in this figure. So this is the open lagoon in the center. This is the open lagoon, and the atoll is in circular shape. So they are usually circular or oval with an open lagoon in the center. So this is another type of coral reef, which is called as atoll. Now let us move forward to discuss coral bleaching. As we have already seen, coral polyps have microscopic algae called zooxanthellae on them. They have symbiotic relationship with the zooxanthellae, which provides the coral polyps with the carbon compounds for energy. In return, coral polyps provide protection to the zooxanthellae. What happens when these coral polyps get under stress? When warmer water temperatures are found in any of the oceans where the coral reefs are there, when water becomes too warm, these corals will expel these zooxanthellae algae living in their tissues, causing the coral to turn completely white. If you look at the picture over here, you can find some of the coral reefs to be colorful, whereas the other coral reefs are found to be colorless. The color of the corals are primarily due to the presence of zooxanthellae on them. So the zooxanthellae imparts color to the corals. They will be varied colors. So red, blue, green, etc., etc. Once the corals get under stress due to warmer temperatures, then what happens is the corals start expelling these zooxanthellae algae from their surfaces or tissues. When this happens, the corals turn to be completely colorless or white in color. So this particular process of expelling of algae, microscopic algae called zooxanthellae, due to stress, making the corals white in color, is called as coral bleaching. Please remember this. Coral bleaching happens due to various stresses that the coral polyps undergo. When a coral bleaches, that is when coral becomes completely white due to being devoid of zooxanthellae, coral is not actually dead. Coral is not actually dead. However, if the thing persists, coral is not actually dead, but if this thing continues for longer period of time, that means if they get under more stress, then they are subject to mortality. That means eventually, after going prolonged period of stress, after being bleached for a very long time, then the corals will die. So this is actually one of the major factors why corals are dying due to warmer temperatures. So corals die after prolonged period of stress, or after they get under more stress after being bleached. So after they are under prolonged period of stress, corals will die. Coral is the longest lived animal actually. As long as the environmental conditions are good enough, it can grow for hundreds of years. It can grow for hundreds of years as long as the environmental conditions are good. However, corals are also extremely sensitive to the surrounding environment. They are extremely sensitive to the surrounding environment. Changes in environmental conditions such as water temperatures, acidity, pH values, turbidity. If the water becomes more turbid, then the sunlight will not be able to penetrate to till the corals are present, till the region where corals are present. So, under such conditions, corals undergo a lot of stress, and this directly affects the symbiotic relationship between the zooxanthellae and coral polyps. So, under such conditions, the symbiotic zooxanthellae will gradually leave the corals, or they get expelled by the coral, and the corals that lose their color sources will gradually bleach. So, this bleaching is detrimental to the corals in the long run. After the symbiotic algae leaves, the corals will not die immediately. If the environment becomes better, let us say water has become totally polluted, a sea has become totally polluted, and coral bleaching has started. However, if actions are taken so that the pollution is mitigated or abated, and if the water starts becoming clear, the bleached corals can regain the zooxanthellae and the corals will start slowly recovering. However, if they bleach for a very long time, if the conditions of pollutions persist for a longer period of time, then the corals will gradually weaken and die. Therefore, coral bleaching is considered as the last distress signal for corals. It is the last distress signal for corals. Coral bleaching it has already occurred in Caribbean, Indian and Pacific oceans, and it has been happening on a regular basis in these oceans. Let's move forward to understand or discuss the causes of coral bleaching. The first and foremost point is rise in sea temperature. Majority of the coral species live in waters close to warmest temperature they can tolerate. However, a slight rise in ocean temperature can harm corals, as we have already discussed. In addition to this, El Nino also exacerbates the sea temperature and destroys coral reefs. We have discussed El Nino at length in one of the videos on Mastermind itself. The second reason is the ocean acidification. As I have already told you, the pH of a sea or a water is going to affect the corals. So due to increase in the carbon dioxide levels, oceans absorb more carbon dioxide. Once the oceans absorb more carbon dioxide, this raises the acidity of ocean water, and once the acidity of the ocean water increases, this inhibits the coral's ability to create calcareous skeletons. Ocean acidification decreases the ability of the corals to create calcareous skeletons. Please remember, the calcareous skeletons will dissolve in or high acidic water, and this in turn inhibits the ability of the coral to create calcareous skeletons. This is crucial for the survival. Calcareous skeletons, as we have already seen, are crucial for the survival of corals, because it is on these calcareous skeletons zooxanthellae survives. So without these calcareous skeletons, zooxanthellae cannot survive, the symbiotic relationship cannot be established, and the corals will start bleaching and die. So ocean acidification is also one of the major reasons why coral bleaching is happening in the world. Third very important thing is solar radiation. Changes in tropical weather patterns results in less cloud cover and more radiations, which induce coral bleaching. As more solar radiation reach the surface of waters along with the ultraviolet radiations, this will indirectly warm the waters of the ocean, resulting in coral bleaching. Next very important thing is infectious diseases. Infectious diseases. Penetration of bacterium like Vibrio Shilloi. Vibrio Shilloi. Please remember, Vibrio Shilloi is a bacterium. They might ask, is it a virus or a bacteria? This Vibrio Shilloi, which is a bacterium, inhibits photosynthesis of zooxanthellae. This inhibits the photosynthetic activity of the zooxanthellae. So these bacteria become more potent with elevated sea temperatures. As the sea temperature rises, it gives conducive atmosphere for the Vibrio Shilloi to thrive, and as they start thriving in warmer waters, directly affects the photosynthetic ability of zooxanthellae, leading to coral bleaching. Next very important factor is the chemical pollution. Increased concentration of nutrients in the sea waters promote phytoplankton growth, and as the phytoplankton increases in concentration, number of species in the sea will also increase, and as the number of species or organisms increase, they compete with the coral for space, leading to more stress on corals, ultimately leading to coral bleaching. Next very important factor is the increased sedimentation. Please remember, increased sedimentation. What happens is land clearing and coastal construction result in high rates of erosion and a higher density of suspended silt particles, which can smother corals when particles settle out, reducing light availability. That is, the turbidity increases due to activities such as land clearing, dredging in the seas, coastal construction, etc. When the turbidity of the water increases, then the sun radiation or the solar radiation will not be able to reach the zooxanthellae, which have the capability of photosynthesis, and as the zooxanthellae will not be able to produce food due to inhibited photosynthesis, then the corals will get under more stress, resulting in coral bleaching. Next important factor is the extreme low tides. Extreme events of low tides exposes the corals to solar and ultraviolet radiations. When low tides come, then the corals will be exposed to solar radiation and ultraviolet radiations as well. As we have already seen, increased solar radiation results in coral bleaching. Next very important thing is predators. Crown of thornfish. You might have heard this name. Crown of thorns, starfish actually. Crown of thorns starfish. It is also called as Acanthaster plankai, also known as crown of thorns starfish. This starfish, it eats corals during nights. Times. So this is detrimental. They may destroy the entire coral reefs if found in vast numbers. So the concentration or the number of crown of thorns starfish cannot increase a certain level. If it increases a certain level, then these crown of thorns starfish will start living on corals. That means they start eating the corals, ultimately leading to death of corals. Along with these threats, overfishing, pollution from agricultural and industrial runoff, coral mining, development of industrial areas near coral ecosystems also adversely impact corals. In other words, human-induced threats are also being detrimental for the survival of corals. Now let us proceed to discuss about the Great Barrier Reef. Great Barrier Reef, it is a site of remarkable variety and beauty on the northeast coast. Please remember the location. This is the northeast. This might be asked in multiple choice questions. So it is on the northeast coast of Australia. It is the largest warm water. This is the largest. Please remember, this is the largest warm water coral reef. It is the largest warm water coral reef. So when you know that this is the largest warm water coral reef, you might ask which is the largest cold water coral reefs. So coral reefs are also found in cool waters as well. So largest cold water coral reefs is the Rost Reef of Norway. So you know now the largest warm water coral reef is Great Barrier Reef of Australia, which is present on the northeast coast of Australia, and largest cold water coral reef is the Rost Reef of Norway. Now the Great Barrier Reef is a World Heritage Site. It is a World Heritage Site. It was declared as a World Heritage Site in 1981. It houses the largest aggregation of coral reefs. It houses the largest aggregation. You can see in the picture itself how long the reef is. It is the world's most extensive and spectacular coral reef system, composed of over 2,900 individual reefs and 900 islands. It contains the world's largest collection of coral reefs with 400 types of corals, 1,500 species of fish, and 4,000 types of mollusks. It also holds great scientific interest as the habitat of species such as the dugong. Dugong is also known as sea cow, and the large green turtle, which are threatened with extinction. Large green turtle. Please remember, large green turtle and dugong are found in this Great Barrier Reef. Recently, aerial surveys have shown that unprecedented coral bleaching in consecutive years has damaged two-thirds of Australian Great Barrier Reef. India has 4 coral reef areas. Gulf of Mannar, Andaman and Nicobar Islands, Lakshadweep Islands and Gulf of Kutch. These are the 4 prominent coral reef areas that are present in India. So this is all about coral bleaching in this video. Please go through the video multiple times for better clarity and also refer to the article as well. Please solve the multiple choice questions given about the topic on the e-paper. Thank you.